the website, and that's called scoping cookies. And there's two ways that you can scope cookies. The first is to scope a cookie to a particular path. And let me take one of the cookies that we created previously, and let's just take this one here starting on line 22, and we'll paste it down below, and we'll change it from cookie 1 to cookie 2. And then what we're going to do with this cookie 2 is we're going to set the path property that will restrict this cookie to a particular path on the website. And just change it one more time. Now if we take cookie 2, and before we add it, what we're going to do is we're going to take cookie 2, and we're going to set the path property. Now this can be set to a physical path or a virtual path underneath the website root. So in this particular case, let's set it to admin. So what would happen here with cookie number 2 is that it's only visible to web pages in the admin folder and below. So if the page that's requested by the user is in the admin folder, they will get cookie number 2 sent back up to the server. However, if the page they're requesting is, say, in the root of the website or in another subfolder off the root on the website, they would not get cookie 2. Now, one of the other ways you can scope a cookie is to a domain. So let's take our cookie 1 and we'll copy and paste it down below, and let me just change that from cookie 1 to cookie 3. Change all that, and now what we can do is down here after the expires property, we can set a property called domain. So we'll take cookie 3, we'll go to domain, and what you can do here is you can set the domain to a specific subdomain, because by default, whenever a user requests a page from on the website, all the cookies for the entire domain are sent back up to the server. But if we set the domain, it restricts it much in the same way that a particular path setting restricts what cookies are sent back. So let's set the domain to support.mysite.com. And in this case, what's going to happen is that cookie number 3 will only be sent back up to the server if the page is associated with the subdomain support.mysite.com. Now in this particular case, we're setting the domain to a specific subdomain called support within mysite.com. We could also set the domain equal to just mysite.com, and then that will restrict the cookie to the mysite.com domain and any subdomains that exist within mysite.com. So that's a variation on using the domain property. Next, we're going to look at how to read cookies when they're sent from the user's browser or through the user's browser from their hard disk back up to the server. And in order to do that, what I want to do is go over here on default ASPX. Let's put it in the design mode and just add a label control so we have somewhere to put information that's coming from the cookies. So go on here, we'll take a label, drag and drop that onto our design mode surface for default ASPX. Now we'll go back into the code. Now that we have that label control on the page, in order to read the cookie, it's pretty much the same as when we wrote the cookie. So we'll just say if not, and the cookies come up in the request object in a cookies collection. And what we're doing here is testing to see first whether the cookie exists, because it could have been deleted down on the user's computer. So we'll get at the last visit cookie, which we wrote previously, and we'll say is not nothing. Then, so in this case, we'll know the cookie exists, and then we'll say label1.text, and we'll assign to that the value of request.cookies.lastvisit.value, which we had stored previously. Now, a good practice, since the cookie could have been tampered with between the time we wrote it and it coming back up to the server is what we're going to do is take this text that is stored inside the cookie, and we can go server.html encode, and that will help prevent any malicious code from being executed here on our server. Now we can also do a very similar approach before by defining an actual instance of the cookie object. So let me just copy what we had, paste it down here, and we'll get rid of this line. And if we know the cookie exists, then what we can do is we can dimension be cookie 4 in this case as an HTTP cookie, and we can set that equal to the request .cookies .last visit there, and let me just change that to a capital L again. And once we have that, then we can take our label1.text and we can set that equal to server.html encode cookie4.value, and that would be equivalent to the previous statement. And we can also access the subkeys in much the same way that we wrote to them. So we could say if not request.cookies. We'll take the user data, which we wrote down to the user's hard disk previously, is nothing. Then once we know that cookie exists, we can say label1.text equal to server.html encode. We can go at the request QUEST, there we go, cookies dot user data, and the subkey of last visit, and close off with our final parenthesis. So this would access the last visit subkey, and we could access any other subkeys in a cookie in the same manner. In addition to accessing the subkey value directly, we could get at it through the values property of the cookie, and that property is actually a name value collection, so we could dimension a local variable. We could, for example, say dimension cookie collection equal to, or rather as, a system.collections.specialize.name value collection, and assign to that the request.cookies, get the user data cookie, and then take the values property. Then using that local variable, which contains the subkeys, we could say label1.text is equal to server.html encode cookie collection, and then the name of the subkey, let's say last visit, and that is just a different way to approach getting at the subkeys. One other thing that you might want to do is modify the value or the expiration date of a cookie, and you can't actually take an existing cookie and modify either the value or the expiration date, but what you can do is create a new cookie of the same name, change the value or the expiration date, and then add it to the cookies collection, and it would override the existing cookie. So for example, let's say we want to update the last visit cookie. What we could do is we could say response.cookies last visit, and set the value, and we could set this to the current date time, so we could say datetime.now to string, and then we could say response.cookies last visit expires, set that equal to datetime.now add days, 1 day from now, and that would update the last cookie value currently down on the user's computer. Now, deleting a cookie is actually very similar to modifying a cookie. Again, you can't directly access the cookie on the user's hard disks, so what we could do is change the expiration date to a date prior to the current time, and then the browser would think that time for expiration of the cookie had already passed, and it would automatically delete it. So you would do something like this. You would say response.cookies. Let's say we're going at the last visit cookie and the expires property, and we would set that equal to datetime.now.add days, and we would put a -1, which would make it 1 day earlier than the current date time, and that would cause the browser to delete that particular cookie. Now, as far as subkeys are concerned, modification of subkeys is essentially writing a new value to the subkey. So in the case of the user data last visit cookie, what we would do is say response.cookies